Well, welcome back to the Hard Men Podcast. My name is Tate Taylor. I'm joined, as always, by Pastor Ethan Sin. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. No cold open, no storytelling as of yet, anyways. We're going to do some question and answer stuff. We've had some audience questions here recently, so we've been putting out a little bit of an AMA, like Ask Us Anything. We'll try to get to it quarterly and answer some of these questions. So that's what this episode is going to be. It'll be a smattering of different topics. But before we get to that, last football practice tonight.
For the whole year.
The whole year.
Yeah. Kind of sad, but
I am kind of sad.
It's been a fun little season we did.
It has been a lot of fun. It's so encouraging to see the boys progress so fast, but you also start to see, like, after the first practice, what happens is you're like, oh no, this is gonna be rough. And then 3 practices in, you're like, actually, this could be really cool. And you start having kind of a vision of what it could turn into. And then right around the time you feel like you're hitting your stride, it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah, we kind of felt the same way with basketball. We did basketball last summer. We're going to do another one this winter, a short couple, 6-week season or something. But it's been really good for our boys. We've really enjoyed it. You know. So I'm looking forward to that. I'd like to do baseball in the spring. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
I think so too. We would have to do it similar to the way we did the hunting trip, where it's like you got an itinerary of things that you need to accomplish over the next 4 months. Give them all the responsibility, and then they need to have a glove. We could probably take care of bats, but like they need to have done some things moving into baseball. It's just a little bit more technical when it comes to gear and preparation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and on the AMA side, we're going to do this every quarter. And so we've got those scheduled out. But it's really helpful as you think of stuff. It doesn't have to be right before the episode, but like as you think of stuff, email us or on Patreon is we have a channel for questions on Patreon, and then the Signal chat. So wherever you want, drop them in, and we just have a running document. We add all those questions in, and then we'll compile them and address them once a quarter. So looking forward to doing that this year. Yeah,
for sure. I'm sure this will hopefully pick up as we kind of get into a regular rhythm of it. But diving into our first question here, it's a serious one. Best beard practices.
You sure this wasn't addressed to you?
I'm assuming this was not my question.
I just in terms of my lifespan just started growing a beard. Shaved every day since I was 17, and now I don't do that anymore. I have found that I'm too afraid to trim it or shape it or do anything myself because I'm just going to mess it up and then have to start over. So I don't touch it unless I'm getting a haircut and I ask the barber to clean it up. But it's pretty straightforward. I use one of these products. I use the Indigo beard oil. It's really good. It smells good. Like 5 drops when I get out of the shower and put a comb through it. And that's it. Like
also, if you've seen the dudes who make the Indigo Sundry stuff, those dudes are monsters.
Big dudes with big beards.
And they've got huge beards. So they have really good beards.
They know something about making good beard oil. So I really like that product. And I was buying it before they were just sending it to us too. So I really like that. Martin just gave me this one today. I didn't realize Humble Love made a beard oil, but I'm going to try this one out too. It's called Outdoorsman. That one also smells pretty good. But yeah, a couple drops of that after I get out of the shower. It really just keeps like the dandruff off your shirt. But if it needs something, I know other people use different products and stuff, but it's pretty straightforward. A little beard oil, decent comb. That's about it.
We have a regular debate that goes on between the two of us and Ben Garrett because he just lets his mustache just grow all the way into his mouth.
Oh yeah.
Which I think is psychotic, but I don't know. That's just me.
I do. Yeah. I'll say that's the only thing I do is like when it gets long, I will trim up the mustache to keep it out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I can't stand that.
I can't stand like taking a bite of food and then chewing on hair. That's the worst. Probably going to get made fun of for that, but I don't really care. Okay, on to a little more of a serious and practical question. This guy said, I'd like more info on the types of books, curriculum, and stuff y'all go through with the men/young men in the training programs at Refuge. So there's a span of different things there. We'll try to address a few of them. I will say before we dive into this answer directly right now, The two of us, Pastor Burkholder sat down with us as well on a few of those, I think. We did a series, I think back in maybe June, somewhere in there, where we were working through building your band of brothers. We worked through a book by Mansfield on this, and then we also just kind of broke down the different ways that we were applying those principles. And then I think the third episode of that series was what this looks like in Ogden. And it was just you and me. And we went through all of the specifics of Titus 2 and Psalm Sing and the Guild and a bunch of these different groups. So if you want a more in-depth look at that stuff, go back and listen to that episode. All that info's there.
I don't think we've published curriculum for the Guild specifically. But if you email me, I'm happy to share that with you as well. But the way I took the question was specifically on the young men. So for the Titus 2 program, what kind of material and curriculum are we using to train them? So I think we've talked about Titus 2 quite a bit, but monthly we have first Friday of every month. We break up the men and the women, 7th through 12th grade, and we go through a vocational skill or ability or training or something that we think young men or young women. My wife leads the women's group, and we try to bring in a subject matter expert on that thing. And so this was kind of how we did the long range shooting and the elk hunting in October. And so we try to go on a 3-year program, and every September has something to do with self-defense or shooting or medical or something like that. So every month kind of remains the same, and every year we kind of go through something unique. So hopefully within they're in there for 6 years, they'll get to go through each one of those things twice.
Yeah.
But in between, I do give them homework. So I will assign them a book or a podcast or a series, a lecture series, something that I think it doesn't really fit into our St. Brendan's curriculum per se, but it's kind of an additional, these are really good things for young men to be aware of or to know or to be trained in. And it's also a broader audience because it's our homeschool kids and our St. Brendan's kids in the Titus 2 program. I
do want to point out that something that's unique about this particular Titus 2 program is that it's kids from our classical school that goes through Refuge. And then it's also kids that are Refuge members who are homeschooled. So you have a cross point there, a connection where those kids are able to intermix and do things that are very intentional and skill building. It's building gravitas and the ability for them to be confident as they become adults. But I think that that's something that's probably pretty unique, is to have a program where it's not just a school thing. It's not just a homeschool co-op thing. It's something where we're taking the youth from the church itself and then training them up. Obviously, the intervals between you interacting with them directly might be a little bit longer. It's a monthly thing, but I think it's still extremely beneficial.
Yeah, and same kids who are coming to lifting 3 times a week. So we're seeing them regularly. They're good friends with the ones that we see every day. So I went back in 2024, and these are some of the books that I had them basically read a book, and I gave them a word count, write an essay about this. And they're slightly different, but I basically give them a month to read a short book and then to write a paper on it. And so last year we went through a couple others, but Art of War, Thoughts for Young Men, J.C. Ryle, More Than a Battle is a book by Joe Rigney about, combating the sin of lust, is really good. We did a short one. I think it was a Don Whitney book on family worship, which is obviously an important thing here at Refuge, but for young men to start thinking about not just this is something I'm receiving, but something that, within a few years I'm going to have to lead and have a reason for doing it, and how am I going to do it, and things like that. So kind of priming the pump with that. Etiquette. So I think it's in February, we do a formal dinner. We invite the guys and the girls. We have a nice dinner. We set the table, with all the forks and glasses and different, I think last year we did like four courses. And so we did that, but in preparation for that, I had the guys read different etiquette books, different aspects of etiquette. So some of it was dress, some of it was table manners, some of it was just general etiquette, how to behave as a man would, and just things that in years past probably dad or grandpa would have taught you, but a lot of these things have been lost that we're trying to recover. So that was really helpful. I can't remember the assignment on that. We did Edwards's resolutions was a good one. A Christian View of War is I think a lecture series that we did and kind of going through just war theory and things like that. So that was good. And then this year I have a book by Ben Palmer called The Formation of Character. And basically so far I've just had him read about 2 chapters a month and then write short essays on that. So that's kind of been some of the curriculum that we've done. I try to make it align with whatever the topic that month is, but it doesn't always do that. Sometimes it's just general, formation of character.
Yeah. Really, really productive. You can tell that they're still boys, right? They're still teenage boys. They still have all of the same temptations and, tendencies of teenage boys, but there is a significant gap between the way that these kids look, behave, the respect that they carry for their elders, the way they even communicate with each other is different than every other group of kids that I've been around, even back to when I was that age. So it's cool to see the impact that some of this stuff is having.
The only other thing I'll add on that is having these deadlines, because and it doesn't matter whether you're in public school or homeschool or private school, putting the responsibility on the young men to, you have an assignment and you have a due date and it's due the close of business, last day of the month or whatever it is. We struggled with this in the first year. If we had 11 boys, 7 of them got it turned in on time and 2 or 3 were late. And so that's been one really important learning point, that we've been able to use this tool to just hammer home the importance of making a deadline. If something comes up, communicating the problem with the instructor, with the authority in that program. And just so far this year, it's gone better, but just using that as a tool to hold them accountable. They can hold each other accountable, treating them like a team and a unit. It's not, if one kid submits it late, it's not just on him, it's on all of them. And just punishing them accordingly, that's been a really helpful thing.
That last thing that you said there was something I was going to emphasize. There actually has to be consequences that are felt if you're going to have young men conform to the standard that you're setting. And if you go, here's the standard, and then, 4 out of 11 can miss the standard and there's no consequences, then it's not actually a standard. And so the enforcement of that is actually really important, which means there needs to be a practical series of decisions that you can make, but also that there's an apparatus there for enforcing that. You need a ton of buy-in from parents and fathers and everyone understanding, like, no, we're trying to turn your boys into men. A lot of that stuff is happening sort of behind the scenes, behind the curriculum, but it's very, very important.
I communicate with them through email because it's about all we have, make them reply to emails and things like that. But just that aspect of like looking at themselves as a team and a brotherhood and not as individuals. Like, I got my work done, if he didn't, that's his problem. Like, no, it's your problem. Mm-hmm. And having them help each other and spur each other on. I think that we've seen good fruit in that. Absolutely.
And this is something, Brian talked about this in a Brad Harth episode the other day, the fact that, physical training and physical aesthetics is a portion of piety that has been neglected. I think this is another one of those places where that principle has been lacking. If you want men to behave and act and believe that they are part of a covenant people, you have to start enforcing that stuff as soon as possible. It can't be individualistic all the time. Your decisions affect your friends. One of the things we probably talked about this before, but we do 7 push-ups at the beginning and end of every workout. Every decision I make affects my people. And that's something that we're trying to drill into their heads, that they are part of a community, part of a team, and they're a part of the covenant people of God, which means that nothing that they do happens in a vacuum. And this is a great way of kind of applying that.
Yeah. So hopefully that answers that question. Be happy to talk more about specific guild curriculum that we're going through this year with the deacon and elder guild, but I think we can save that maybe for another time.
Would you want to give just like an overview, like kind of we're reading a couple books a month. We have a primary theology book, and then we have a secondary book that's typically some sort of fiction or additional kind of enculturation type thing.
Yeah. So each month kind of has its own focus. in terms of theology, there is a focus for each month. And so we tried to find the best book we could that we've read that would help bring our guys along in that subject and kind of just expand their preparedness for church office. And then they're geared specifically toward the diaconate, toward the pastorate. And so, a primary, usually theological book going through, some of the ones this year for the Pastors Guild, for the Elder Guild. There's homiletics. There's Baxter's Reformed Pastor. There's something on eschatology. There's something on church history. There's something on counseling, apologetics. Reading Augustine, the Institutes, things like that. So that gives you a taste for like what the primary focus of the month is. And then the secondary one, sometimes we talk about them, sometimes we don't. But yeah, they're more like Never Split the Difference, Good to Great. Some of these books that have been influential on some of the guys down here, a Catholic apologetic, a Mormon apologetics, tribal leadership, divine comedy. Some of these just great Western canon books as well. Trying to stretch guys and give them an opportunity to read stuff that we wish we would have read in school or in college or growing up and just never did. So trying to, basically make up for lost time.
A couple of books that we're going to get to read this year in the Diaconate Guild, which I'm really excited about and I've never read before. The Iliad, Moby Dick, and we're working through Brave New World right now. We're going to do 1984 next, and Brave New World is extremely interesting. So stuff like that exactly what you just said, where it's like, these are books that I know I should have read, but I've never done it. This is a way of you sort of like for these guys in particular going, all right, that's not just going to live on your shelf and you say that you have it in the library, but you've never actually read it, kind of a thing.
Yeah. And those are the secondary books. For the primary ones, same thing, church history, book on the Trinity, mortification of sin, bondage of the will. Paul's vision for the deacons is, I think, the best one we found on what is a deacon and what's the deacon for. So we really like that one. Holiness of God. We just read Confession. So a lot of good stuff there. Really excited for this year, the program.
It's been a lot of fun so far.
Let me ask this question next if we're going to move on.
Yeah, let's do it.
So the question I got was, when you have legitimate brothers who are to your right and you want to check them, how can you do that in a disarming way without signaling their defenses? And so it was kind of a simple question, but I didn't know exactly where he was going or what that meant. So I asked some clarifying questions, because initially I'm thinking like, are we talking about the no enemies to the right, no enemies on the right principle? Why do you want to check them? Or are they caught in a sin? And then, I think we'll get into this in the question, but like, are we trying to argue with logos or ethos or pathos? Like what is the approach we're taking, and kind of getting into that a little bit. But overall, I think, after I asked some clarifying questions, basically the question was coming from a perspective where, he doesn't necessarily see it as a left-right thing, but just the application on the right, or to his brother who's right of him, is just a little more extreme than he would be comfortable with. And so, whether we're talking about, what is the solution for the problems that our country is facing right now? What is the solution to our multicultural problem and the fruit that is borne out? And then, there are all kinds of kind of rabbit holes and things you can go down and things like that. But basically, the guy who has the question is not trying to convince his brother off his position. He just wants to make sure that he's fruitful in the mindset, that the issue is properly ordered among his priorities, and he has a good home. He's the brother in question is, I think, spiritually desperate. He doesn't have any spiritual leaders he finds worthy of respect in his life. And so I think, the temptation there would be just to kind of latch on to some of these talking heads that maybe aren't Christian, or maybe would have a different view on practically on what it means to live out Christian lives and Christian morals and things like that. So does that make sense in terms of how the question was framed?
Yeah, this is one of those things. I think we talked about this earlier at lunch, but it's difficult to address in a very general manner. It would be helpful to have, exact examples. However, then you just get into the problem of like, well, every single example is going to be a little bit different. Yeah. I think from a general standpoint, though, it is really important what you pointed out, that there are a ton of guys who are sort of waking up to the fact that they are discontent with the way that the country is moving, with the way that the culture feels, and they want to move in the right direction. But the stimulus for a lot of that tends to be 12-second videos on Instagram or TikTok or something like that, or some show that YouTube won't allow because it's too right.
Yeah,
and so you kind of get caught in a very online driven movement in that Overton window towards the right, which is not all bad. But I think one of the things that we need to be extremely intentional about is trying to find local examples of that actually being practiced.
Yeah, you need the local example, and you need to be under the authority of a pastor who is at least in some ways a courageous man of God who is saying hard things, who's having tough conversations, who takes the word seriously and the application of it seriously. Like that they can't all live online. All of the heroes or all the people that we follow, they can't live online. We need them to be local, right? For our sake and, for our accountability and things like that. So I think that that's a helpful thing to avoid. The other ditch is some of this tendency, I think, goes, there's a problem. Andrew Tate is saying some things that like nobody else is saying. So I'm going down that road. And I think this is the thing that leads people toward, EO or Roman Catholic or things like that, but not recognizing that there are faithful churches that are of the Reformed tradition. They do exist. Ogden's not the only one. And, but that might require moving to a Christian borough where these people are already there. So yeah, I think that's just the thing to avoid, is like just latching on and blackpilling just because this guy's saying things that more mainstream guys are not.
I think that's probably another consequence that you'll see a lot, is the guy that's to the right of you who tends to be very defensive when you bring some stuff up and ask him some questions that you go, hey, this over here looks a little concerning to me. It also, you did put in the notes here, like, is someone in sin? Because that's a completely different conversation. Like, we're talking about a Christian brother to a Christian brother, addressing him, rebuking him if need be. And that's just a moral imperative for a Christian. Like, this is something we're supposed to do. If it's something that's a little bit more, I don't want to use the word neutral, nothing's neutral, but it's not a sin issue, right? This is just a difference in opinion on, how fast we want to react to this culturally or whatever. I think a good place to start is to ask questions of, are we having these conversations if the thoughts and the motivation that we have is moving in a positive direction, or if it's all negative? Because I think what you tend to find is that, like you said, people get blackpilled, and then all of the solutions tend to be very negative ones. They tend to be, not that a positive vision can't have some aggression to it. I think it absolutely can. But I think there tends to be a bit of a black pill demoralization, just descend into misery or become a hermit, or I just need to go out into the mountains by myself kind of thing. And I would say that you want to be moving in a more positive direction. There needs to be a positive vision to that Overton window shifting to the right.
Yeah, even if it's a 500-year vision.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to see it all unfold during our lifetime, but we're at least building the foundations that our kids can continue to run with it. So this kind of made me think overall about the mentality that whoever we're talking about, whichever kind of talking head or kind of far right, alt-right guy, I think it's important to remember that nobody is coming for us. Like, that's something that, like, they put on t-shirts, but like it's a true statement. Like, there's nobody coming for us, and nobody's coming to save us. And the thing is when I look at these guys, wherever they are on the spectrum, like, to my left or to my right, I don't know who they are. I don't know, what their motivations are. I don't even know if they're Christians, right? The only thing I can know with certainty is what I know here. I know New Christendom Press is not controlled opposition. I know that nobody is, promising a bigger platform if we don't talk about this issue or that issue. I know nobody here has received a call or been invited on the trip. I know there's, I know that, and it doesn't mean that everybody else necessarily is, but it makes me wonder, just question like what is going on here and who's really pulling the strings.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a healthy skepticism to have with people that you don't, with any of these public figures that you don't know personally. It doesn't mean they're all bought and paid for, but controlled opposition, there are different mechanisms to pull those strings. It could be, hey, all you have to do is like be soft on this one issue, or all you have to do is like be more aggressive against this thing. And it can be really tempting. I think for good Christian men, it can be tempting because, logically you could say that's a really minor thing in what my overall platform and message is. And if I don't talk about that one thing, maybe I could reach a lot more people, and get this message, or even say for the sake of the gospel, get this bigger message, and platform.
Yeah. The motivations might be entirely good, but the tendency to want to, even if it's not prompted outside of you, your desire for a larger audience, desire for more eyeballs, can influence you to run cover to people that are just half a step left of you, that have bigger platforms, so that they will in return give you some of that attention, and then prop you up. And so I think that's something that we probably see a lot of.
Yeah. And I think that's the tendency of conservatives. It has been for a long time, is lean left. They've got the bigger audience, the bigger platforms and more access, and then punch right. And I think that's a mistake to avoid. And I think the important thing to remember is that when thinking through this problem of like, how do I reach the people left of me, or how do I soften my message so that they're going to be won to what I'm doing. I just don't think that the middle is, the vast majority of the middle is actually winnable. And it's not because they're not winnable. It's because they don't need to be won. The vast majority, there's a dedicated percentage on the far right and a dedicated percentage on the far left, true believers, and they're, have, really strong convictions. But the middle are sheep, and they need to be led, not won. So I think the strategy of trying to, even if I'm going to cave or be quiet on this one issue, so that I can reach those people, it's actually a mistake, because they don't need to be reached in that sense. They need to be led. And so I think that just thinking about it in that way is a lot more helpful in that overall kind of power dynamic.
And in response to kind of the netter portion of this, like no enemies to your right kind of thing, I don't think that there's the command that you never rebuke anyone right of you for anything. I think that's definitely on the table to do. The picture that I would draw, though, is if we are practicing all week for a game on Friday night, practice is where those things happen. We don't run out on the field on Friday and then start advocating for penalties against our own team. Right. You always want the call. Right. You want the yardage. You want the advantage, because we're fighting an enemy that we're trying to defeat.
Yeah.
If you're going to do some of this like more internal calling out stuff, that stuff needs to happen in practice. It needs to happen on the sideline when you're insulated with your guys. Right. It's not that it can't happen. I think it actually absolutely should. That's the way we get better. But we need to be careful not to be doing that on the public platform in front of the whole world with our enemies watching.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also, when we talk about controlled opposition, not everybody who is controlled opposition knows they're controlled opposition. And in this, it doesn't always happen in the form of a phone call and like a pyramid scheme or something like that, where there are these promises made. But I think when thinking about the principle and the play, why controlled opposition benefits those who are in power. And I think you can look at tons of examples. You can look at, why did Israel create Hamas? You can look at every war we've ever fought in the Middle East. It was a decade prior that we were arming rebels, and then a decade later we're fighting those guys and they're the enemy. It's like the Orwell, we've always been at war with East Asia. And I think part of that, you can think about the principle in your marriage or in your church, when there is an external threat. If this has ever happened, you had some major battle you're fighting, you look back on it, you're like, I've never been stronger with my wife. We didn't fight at all during those months. Same thing, in the church, like we've never been more aligned. We don't have internal strife or conflict because we have an enemy and he's at the gates. And when that enemy goes away, that's when internal conflict arises, right? When there is not a war to be fought, you find something to fight about inside. And so I think controlled opposition as a tool of the totalitarian state, like this is why they did it in 1984. It was a mechanism of control for the population, because if you have this perpetual state of war and fear, you're destroying surplus resources, you're creating this sense of an external threat that unites the populace against a common enemy, and instead of against their totalitarian overlords. And so it's a useful tool. And so I think that's why it's being run, and that's why it's something to be aware of. But it also works against us on the right. If there's a guy or a talking head with a big microphone saying things that on the Overton window, like 6 months ago, would have got you fired, we've moved the Overton window. He seems like he's on the cutting edge of what he's allowed to say. I don't think it actually reveals whether he is controlled opposition or not, but based on what he's saying or where he is on that spectrum. Because I think one of the mechanisms is when we have a guy with a big platform saying things, it makes all of us kind of lulled to sleep, kind of like take a break, take a knee. Hey, we won that last election. We defeated the wicked Democrat, and now like we can kind of coast until there's another battle to have. When in reality, like that we shouldn't be coasting at all. Like if we just because we hear somebody saying some exciting or very right wing things, that should not let us take our foot off the gas. But a lot of times it does. We take the W and we just say, we're going to sit out these next 4 years and we'll get back in the game.
Yeah.
But I think that's also the way it works. Is it basically keeps guys off the field and keeps them from fighting. And
it's not to say you shouldn't be encouraged when you see people saying things that used to be not possible to say. Like, it's great. It means we're making progress in some
100%.
But that's not the signal to hit the brakes.
100%.
That's the signal to continue to put your foot further and further towards the floor.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything they're saying is not true. It is true. I think whatever they're saying, the actual truth is way worse than that if they're permitted to say it. But we should still thank God that they can say it, and we still live in a country where these things can be said.
Yeah.
But if they're allowed to talk about the origins of COVID or the open border problem or the truth of 9/11 or call out a senator on Zionism or seed oils or whatever the thing is, I think the unfiltered truth is far worse than we can actually imagine. So I think that's just kind of my point there, is that these guys aren't fighting our battles for us.
Right. Yeah, we've got to fight our own battles. One question I do have on this, because I have a feeling that there are people who are listening that are going, how do you hold that level of black pill when you look at the world and then also a positive vision for the future at the same time?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. But basically it should be a spur to us at a very local level. So I can't live, wherever I want to live and go to whatever kind of crappy church happens to be in my thing. And the pastors suck and they're weak and they're feminine and their wives run the church, and watch this stuff online and think, oh man, we're winning. No, we're losing, and this is just some of the things that you're fed so that you just kind of cope and don't do anything about it. Like, I think balkanization is such an important principle in the day that we live in. But if whatever we're hearing, I think the question that you have to ask is, whatever's being said, why does it matter to me, and what am I supposed to do about it? And if the answer is like and subscribe and tune in next week, then and do nothing, then you have your answer. Like, you're supposed to do nothing. They want you to do nothing. They want you to continue to be pacified, thinking this guy's doing it for me, and that's just not the case. Nobody's coming for us.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not black-pilled at all. I just think it's something that we have to seriously inspect.
I just think that that's a really important thing to be able to hold in balance at the same time, to be able to look at the things that you find on your news feed and be as righteously angry as you ought to be, and then turn that into positive action towards some sort of like genuinely positive, push the ball forward type pursuit. And I think that's a skill that we've got to get better at. I think there are a few things happening recently that are helping with this. The Charlie Kirk stuff, the girl on the train. There have been numerous instances where we're not able to interact with that situation directly at all. However, the emotional response is typically the correct one with the guys in our camp. The thing to do, though, is to realize that you have to take that energy and put it into a positive pursuit where your feet are standing in order for us to begin to win and change things on a more drastic scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Follow-up question to this was asked by another guy who solved this question. He said a good corollary topic would be when you're getting checked by legitimate brothers to your left, but are resolved in your own convictions, how to rebuff without breaking fellowship. So maybe these two guys were the ones talking about each other. I don't know, but he said that agree to disagree always bothered him as a solution. So whether, either direction, like we're really talking about like how do we have these discussions without breaking fellowship, right? And is agree to disagree a viable solution for Christian brothers on some of these topics? And I think this one is a much more common scenario. I think that, I don't know a lot of guys to my right.
That's a good point.
I mean, I don't know.
In this particular room.
Yeah. But I think in general, the principles to remember are, yes, they are Christians. Yes, they are your brothers, and approaching these things with humility and grace. One thing that has always kind of like pricked my conscience whenever you start to get haughty and like, man, why don't you see this? It's so obvious. Why doesn't everybody agree that all these guys are controlled opposition? Or whatever the thing is. Why, COVID? Why doesn't everybody see what a scam this is and what? It takes humility and grace, and it should be a reminder that if it was, if not for the grace of God, I would be there exactly in the same place. It's not me. It's not my smartness. It's not my internet research or anything else that has led me to the convictions I have today, or like any of that. It's only God's grace. And so I think that there can be a lot of humility in that of like, this isn't me. I didn't earn it. And so I can extend that charity to my brother who's not there yet.
Yeah, for sure. On that note, the more theology that works itself into the way you think, the better. And especially if it's good theology, I guess I should qualify that. But God's sovereignty reigning supreme and his providence being the outworking of everything that ever happens, like him providentially moving through history, his plan unfolding, is, I think, a constant thing that has to be in the back of your head. Like, this is part of the plan, even when you're in the midst of the fight. And I think that's really, really important there. And that brings you back to that humility and grace of like, but not for the grace of God, I would be worse than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we can give thanks that we are so aligned on more important things, tier 1, tier 2 issues, and not just be upset that we can't agree on this, more Christian liberty side of things. Patience, long suffering. I think these things aren't going to happen overnight. Someone's not going to get their mind changed immediately. Like, and I don't think it's deceptive to use to play the long game. One example, good friends of mine, they were a young couple, they were dating, they were thinking about getting engaged, or I think maybe they got engaged, but they asked us to do premarital counseling with them. And basically their game plan was, she's going to, finish college, then they're going to get married, then she's going to go to dental school, and that's going to be another couple years, and they're going to have a long distance relationship. He's going to keep doing his job. They're going to put off having kids for so many years, and then, eventually she'll be able to, be a dentist, and then they'll be able to start thinking about having kids. They'll be in their mid-30s, and so it was like obviously from the jump, we could see it was a terrible game plan. But we didn't just say that's stupid, and just come off the top rope. We walked through premarital counseling with them. We invited them in our home. My wife was, stay-at-home mom, and just showed them the fruit of what they could do if they chose to go down a different path than the one they were on. And it didn't happen overnight, but the results, speak for themselves. They're married, kid one on the way. She's a stay-at-home mom. He's winning the bread for the family. And it's like a great success story of like, even though the answer was like so obvious on day one, like not going for the jugular on the first like interaction, I think is one of the important things that is the patience and long suffering.
So you put the word long suffering in here, so I have to tell a quick anecdote. My grandparents, my grandfather just turned 75. They've been married for 55 years, something like that. My grandmother was talking to my parents, and then this was passed down to me. But basically, they've had the same friend group since they were in high school. They're still, and there's a group of them. There's like 8 or 10 of them. And, there's 4 or 5 couples. They've been friends forever. And it was a discussion on friendship. Like, how do you maintain these friendships over such a long period of time? People drift in and out of convictions, or their lives take different paths. And my grandmother used that word. She was like, you have to be long suffering. If you want to be friends with someone for the next 50 years, there's going to be moments where that's going to be difficult to do. So just in general, this is a good principle for friendship over the long term, regardless of the situation. You're going to have to be long suffering.
I'm sure you could, like, we've been friends for like 2 years. I'm sure you can come up with times that you've been long suffering with me. If
probably more examples in the opposite direction, but I mean, I don't know. I would have to think pretty hard about it, honestly.
I think the other thing we talked about it earlier, but logic not being the most potent tool in the tool belt for these scenarios, like it's people's hearts aren't won by strictly logical, rational, reasonable arguments. Like, the way you argue has to be based on logic. Like you can't pull it out of thin air. So it has to be based on logic, but just going for straight logical stuff, like that's not the way people's hearts are won. And so trying to incorporate the ethos and the pathos, the ethos, the appeal to the speaker's credibility and authority, if that, if there's that, or pathos being the appeal to the audience's emotions. And I don't know if you feel this way, Tate, but like when I think about an emotional appeal, I think my default setting is like, that's effeminate.
Yeah.
Like that's masculine, feminine, logical emotion. Like it's, yeah. But like, the fact is that's how people's hearts are won. They're won with story, and they're won with emotions, and they're won with seeing the fruit, the good fruit that comes from this position or this conviction. And I think that those things, when they're based on logic, can be really effective in winning these arguments, more than just like straight logic all the time.
To add some practical advice behind that, I would just say practice storytelling. This is a really difficult thing. I think that's probably if a guy has you have this high T guy, he's probably going to react exactly the same way that you do. Where if someone goes, well, did you appeal to their emotion? I'm going to go, do you even know me? No. Like I'm going to almost be like taking offense at that question. I want to argue from a logical, foundation all the time, but you're absolutely correct. It's not the thing that wins people's hearts, which means that you need a different skill set when it comes to like really putting this into practice. And the skill set is being a better storyteller.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing to remember is like I don't know if we're winning. Maybe we're winning, but we're still behind on the scoreboard. I think we're gaining momentum. The Overton window is moving right. We can see that every day. We can see mainstream guys saying stuff that would have got you fired not that long ago, or canceled on Twitter. As it shifts, normies will shift with it, because they're sheep who are made to be led, and that's fine. And you can be patient with those guys, and they will move along with it. It'll take them longer than it took you, and that's fine. But just again, patience.
Yep.
The next question, the guy said, I need this right now too. Having some disagreements that have gotten very heated at times with some very good friends. I'm actually more okay with agree to disagree on some of the details, but others are not. He says it's a frustrating time where he feels like we'll unnecessarily divide, or basically I'll have to adjust my own convictions. He references Paul and Barnabas, that they sharply divided over stuff, but they grew through it. Unity in the essentials, grace for the rest. He said typically people tend to get more conservative as they age. He's 55, but you have less tolerance for BS. But inversely, you have more understanding and more allowance for the immaturity of others. So basically, his point was not dividing over adiaphora, over things indifferent. And I think that this made me think of something I've seen a lot is people have this weird position they hold. It can be on any topic, but it kind of goes like you have a firmly held conviction on X. It's baptism or Calvinism or post-war consensus or against the post-war consensus. It doesn't really matter. But they say, if you don't agree with me on the opposite position, then you are proud.
Yeah.
It kind of goes like that. Like, we disagree. We couldn't have further from each other on what we are convicted of. And if you don't move, or at least give some, basically question to your conviction and say, well, actually, I'm not that sure, you're proud. Have you seen that?
I've seen examples of this for sure.
And basically, if you're convinced of a position that disagrees with my convinced position, the only explanation is your pride, which is a sin. Which is yeah. It's basically they're saying, who are you to have a stronger conviction than I do? To have like that. That's in opposition to me. Assurance. Like, on what authority do you get to disagree with me? It reminded me of Chesterton wrote a book called Orthodoxy, and one of the lines from it says, "But what we suffer from today is humility in the wrong place. Modesty has moved from the organ of ambition. Modesty has settled upon the organ of conviction, where it was never meant to be. A man was meant to be doubtful about himself, but undoubting about the truth. And this has been exactly reversed." And I think it's important to be able to put people in different categories. Like, you need to know who people are in your life and what category they fall into. There are people you can have friendly debates with, and we do this all the time. Like, all the time we have friendly debates on Christian liberty tier 3 kind of issues. And we walk away like friends and not thinking like, I have to convince you of this thing. There's another category for apologetics when you're debating people who are outside the body. And there's obviously different approaches that you might take with that and reasons why you might be doing apologetics, right? But what we're talking about here with the pride thing is this category of people that, honestly, these conversations should be avoided altogether because it's a complete waste of time. Yeah. It's completely unfruitful, and it just should be avoided. It seems like a breach of the fellowship, like a breach of the friendship to do this. It depends on how far away or close this person is as a friend, right? There are co-belligerents, there are like acquaintances online. Then there are people that like, oh, well, we go to church together. And then there's like your guys. Like allies. Yes. Like, these are the dudes that I'm calling when things go bad, right? So I think it depends on where you're at on that scale, how you're going to react to this. But there are genuinely things that even with people that are closer to you, you can sort of go, listen, we agree on 98% of things. This is an area where apparently both of us feel very strongly in different ways. We can just avoid that. Yeah. Unless it's some sort of like you said, like central, like first tier doctrine type stuff. Right. If it's a tertiary thing, it doesn't have to split your friendship over it. No, not at all. And I think this is why Proverbs 26 gives us these two proverbs right next to each other. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. And then the very next one, answer not a fool, right? Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. And then answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. So how do you do both of those at the same time? Obviously you can't. It takes wisdom to know what time it is, know who the fool is here. And then it takes wisdom to apply these verses to know what time is it, right? What do I need to do here? It's also really important to be careful not to take a person's differing opinion personally, right? Because if someone disagrees with you and then you go, what you actually are doing is saying that I'm an idiot. You're like, whoa. Yeah. Or proud, which is worse. Right. Exactly. Right. And being able to kind of like hold back from that. And it kind of is impossible for people to actually be objective. Like, we're all subjective. It's just the way things are. But to try to take it as much of an objective stance as you can
in those situations really helpful. Just because someone has a differing opinion doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing that based off of you.
No. I think to answer, kind of summarize the last three, there is actually a lot of room to agree to disagree. Not everyone is going to hold the exact position on every single thing down to every minute detail. Even I was thinking about our session, there's tons of differing viewpoints on tier 3 issues. And I think that's why it's important to understand that categorization of like tier 1 being, is somebody a Christian or not? Tier 2 being, can we unify in a church together? And tier 3 being like the Christian liberty stuff where we can be in a church together and agree to disagree and it's fine. And I think that we have to be able to rightly categorize these things. The tendency is to elevate something lower up to a higher category.
Yeah.
Like, are you even a Christian? And I think outside of our own church, right, we can even have more room and more grace on the tier 2 things, even because we don't have to be in a church together. I'm not saying you're not a Christian, or you don't need to say I'm not a Christian, because it's not a tier 1 issue, but we don't even have to, we're not in the same church, so we can extend even more grace on those sorts of things. So charity, long suffering, wisdom, applying these things, whether it's dealing with people on the left or on the right of us, and avoiding that temptation to lean left, punch right. And a lot of this also comes down to fearing God and not man.
Absolutely.
That's usually the tendency why people want to lean left and punch right. It seems like the left is more loving, more loving than God.
Loving.
And so that's why that tendency exists. But yeah, fear God, not man.
And understand that it's a long fight. Everything doesn't have to be decided in the next 24 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. The next question that came up was, he said, I don't know if it's a he. I can't say I've been keeping up with the podcast recently. I assume it's a he. So maybe it's already been covered, but one that would be worthwhile, I think, is to decide or figure out which discipline or course of work one should seek to excel at. For instance, we have great writers, artists, craftsmen, architects, etc. of old. How do we bring such things back to our society or become one ourselves, and how to decide on what to become? And so when I heard this question, I don't know how we bring it back to our society other than patronize, like that's maybe the easier one because it's not as personal, but we patronize Christian businesses that make great work, right? Like we find good architects and we patronize them and give them business and choose them over the secular, the pagans that hate us. Like, I think that's an easier one.
I think another thing to realize here is that there's examples here of great writers, artists, craftsmen, architects. Almost all of the examples that we would come up with to fit those categories, those men were multifaceted experts. They were not just artists. They were not just craftsmen. They were, fluent in multiple different languages. They were artists with painting as well as with the written word. They could play music. They were a true Renaissance man in some sense. They had the ability to do a range of different things. And so I think the thing that we're at right now is actually working on being a man of range. Yeah. And then once you get to a certain level of competency in multiple different things, then you can kind of start figuring out what's going to be the most profitable, what's going to yield the most fruit for me and my family and our community. And it doesn't always have to be one answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're doing a ton of different things. It's not just like Ethan's the boys high school teacher.
Just jack of all trades, master of none.
Which I think there's an additional portion to that saying where it goes on. We only say the first portion of it, and I'm not going to be able to recall what the next portion of it is. But it basically goes on to talk about the fact that it's actually really useful to have a jack of all trades and master of none. It allows someone to appreciate more about the world.
The second part is, but oftentimes better than a master of one.
There you go.
There.
It's actually not a bad thing to be a jack of all trades. It's a useful thing. You want those guys. We
always use it in a derogatory sense, talking about F-16 pilots, because they did a lot of different things. They just weren't good at any of them. When I thought about the question, are we talking about ourselves? Like, I assume most people are like 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, kids, older kids, even grandkids. And so I think for our generations and the ones kind of plus or minus one, I think the answer to the question is a little bit different than if we're talking about our children. I think for a lot of us, we don't have the luxury of the time to become a master artist or author or craftsman. Like I just don't think it's in the cards for a lot of us. And that's not like I think that's a realistic perspective, not like a black pilled one. Cause I think the instinct is really good. I think these are things we should be thinking about. But I'm not going to start over and become a master architect or whatever we need. It's just probably not going to happen.
What's interesting too is that we actually have guys that are doing stuff like this.
We do, yeah.
We've got a guy here in our church who's an architect. He's working with a guy out in the Tennessee borough that we're friends with, and those guys actually have an architecture podcast. I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but I think it's anything but architecture. But those guys are brilliant in that particular arena. They're pursuing that. Seems like it's going well. I think they're working on some stuff with Steadcraft. Like these things are happening. But I think it's probably a consequence of just obsession. Like that's the thing that those guys are obsessed about. I think the instinct is to go, well, we used to have all of these artists and craftsmen and whatever. And yes, there were more than there are now. But there haven't ever been a point in time. There's never been a point in time where those made up the majority of the population. There were still few and far between.
Yeah, we still had a lot of ditch diggers.
We had just regular people.
Yeah.
And I think the instinct is to go, I just have to find the thing that I could be really good at and then pursue that, but I have no idea what it is. And in reality, if you're going to be obsessed about something enough to become a real like top 1% master at it, it will find you.
Yeah.
You're not going to have to look real hard.
Yeah, no, I think
for that to happen.
I think that's true. I think more broadly than, the world, like the Michael Jordan of painting or whatever. What we're really talking about is, how do we have more economic freedom? How do we have more freedom of our time and agency and not be slaving for the man or for the corporation, 40 or 50 hours a week. I think that's a lot of times what people are asking is how do I free myself from these shackles? And it may not be possible for us. But no matter what, it has to be approached from a position of strength, meaning you can't burn the boats. You can't take the Andy Bernard approach and like poop on your boss's car and just be like, you got to fire me now. I got to make it as an actor. A lot of people that I talk to find themselves in a unfulfilling, high paying, low effort job where they have a lot of free time and they look at their 40-hour week job and they say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something either more beneficial to the kingdom or that I'm more passionate about or just something that's not not a wage slave, not just being paid for my time. And those are huge opportunities, right? I think we sometimes have bought into this idea that the work week is 40 hours and like anything over that is overtime. And if I'm not getting paid time and a half, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the wrong way to look at our time. Most of the guys that I know down here are putting in 65, 75 hours a week regularly. And the thing is like that's not that hard to do. Like still have good home lives. Wives love them. Kids know who they are. It's not insane. Saturday is a work day. Saturday is not a football day. And so I think it's important when you find yourself in those positions of strength and you could put in another 20 or 30 hours a week, getting something going with the income and, with the free time that you have in the current situation, like that is one indication that you actually are being blessed with the ability to do something else, whether that's learn a new trade or start a new business or something like that.
And as always, like if you're going to do something entrepreneurial like that, the first thing that you try is probably not going to work. The second thing you try is probably not going to work. And maybe the third thing will work or, whatever. But it probably is going to take way more time and effort and energy than you're thinking that it's going to get it moving. So with anything like that, just expect to work really hard for a long period of time and see no results.
Yeah. I will say on the positive side, we have had several men in the church go from a corporate job to start their side hustle that has become a full-time job.
Yep.
And even employs other people now. And so that, you know, it is possible. It's not always the sexiest thing, but it's good work. It's stuff that people need. They were talented at the job already. It was something that the community needed. The other thing I think to consider would be, we're going to see this more and more. We already see it a lot, but there's a ton of boomer businesses that are already cash flowing that they have no succession plan. The kids don't want it. They don't want to do that thing that, you know, they went to college for something else and they're doing that. And these guys have nobody to like sell the business to, give the business, let them take over anything. And so I think that there are huge opportunities in the local community of things that have already proven to be successful and just need somebody who has the willingness to go and do it.
There are multiple examples of this happening in the church right now, where there are guys who are outside the church who are getting ready to retire, or they're just going to die at their desk sometime soon. And they don't have anyone to hand their business over to. And there are young men in our church who are taking over those things right now just by, you know, guys that are helping them out, mentors, making connections, and then letting them kind of get the ball rolling on some of those things. So
there's one I heard about recently. A guy has a business. It's it's firearm manufacturing, like custom long range rifles, wild stuff, like makes his own line of cartridges and all this stuff. But like, that would be he needs to apprentice somebody. This guy's not in our church, but he's in the town. He needs to apprentice somebody so that all of this knowledge that he has acquired over decades isn't just gone when he's gone.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. I think more on the skill side of things as well, like asking these guys, can I apprentice under you for free?
Yeah.
You know?
And then taking that additional 20, 30 hours a week and putting it towards something like that.
I think the other way I thought about this question was with our children. Our children have more opportunities than we have just because we're further down the road. We were not classically educated, but our kids will be. We, went to college, worked for the man, but our children are in a position where they can take a different path. So I think it's important for us to, and that could be any number of things, right? There's a huge opportunity in the blue collar work right now, HVAC and plumbing and electrical, that is like, that stuff is always going to have to exist. And there's not a lot of people doing it. So I think people can make a killing in that. And so just the warning not to despise the path that the children maybe should be taking just because it was different than ours. We saw how well that works to go to college for 4 or 6 or 8 years and have hundreds of $1,000s of debt. And then, it's hard to, then you end up working at Starbucks when you're out of college. Like it's not working. So,
I mean, maybe if you're Brian Sauvé.
Well, if it worked for Brian, maybe we do the Brian.
Yeah, maybe we all ought to go that direction.
If you're a generational talent and you have the voice and the skill set, maybe you could do it that way. But I think it takes a deliberate effort on the part of the father to know their children, to know them. They have to be around and spend time with them, and then giving them opportunities to figure out what those things are going to be for them. So we started the Tate 2 kind of summer internship program last summer, having got guys anywhere from 12 to 16 intern with other guys in our church who are doing these things. And it doesn't have to be a one-shot thing where, hey, you interned with the HVAC guy and now you're going to be HVAC, but at least gives them good work experience, good work ethic experience, and like dabbling in that thing. And yeah, maybe we could make something like this work. So I think those dads being intentional of creating those opportunities, networking with enough people so that the kids have those opportunities when they're younger. Like, this isn't something you wait until they're out of high school for. This has got to be younger.
For sure. And just taking the opportunity to try stuff and knowing that the first thing that you do when you're 17 doesn't have to be your lifelong career. If that ends up being the case, then great. Praise God. But probably not going to be the case. Like, I'm not doing the first 7 or 8 things that I did for a paycheck. So I think most people are probably in the same situation.
All right. Next question is, what is the difference between gravitas and agency? And I think this one came up probably based on the podcast with Marty, where we talked about agency quite a bit. So, Tate, what's the difference between gravitas and agency?
This is a great question. These are the kinds of questions that I really enjoy having to kind of think through. I wrote down a response when I first saw it, and then Ethan added a whole bunch of stuff to the notes. So we'll see if I can remember what's mine and what's his.
Yours is the first sentence.
Yeah, mine was very concise.
You can just take credit for all of it.
His is like paragraphs of stuff going on here. I'll kind of read, I think, what I wrote, and then we can talk about it a little bit. Agency is the sense of power that you have over your own thoughts and actions, your sense of self-discipline and competence. Agency and confidence are acquired through hard work and repetition. So agency is sort of the feeling that you have about your skill set, your abilities, the way that you can conduct yourself. You could say even like your own view of your potential.
Yeah.
I would say gravitas is more like the weight that you carry and the respect that you demand when you walk into a room. The more agency and truthful confidence you have, the more gravitas you will be able to carry by default. And so I think agency actually, they're not exactly the same thing. Agency contributes to gravitas.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. I see them being more agency, being a more internal, even like internal monologue, and gravitas is something that people can look at you and see.
Yeah.
It's more of like external looking in, where agency is more internal.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way of thinking about it. Agency is your own personal internal perspective on the weight that you're carrying and the competency that you have. And then gravitas is the outward reflection of that coming back to you. Yeah. If you have gravitas, then you can know that the sense of agency that you feel is true.
It's true, yeah.
Based off of everyone else communicating that to you,
yeah,
by lending you respect, because you carry gravitas.
Yeah. My thoughts on agency were, it's the ability to make decisions and act independently. And Marty said this: you can just do stuff.
Yeah.
Right. It's not asking for permission, but knowing the times and what to do about them, and then doing them. The opposite mentality, of agency is that all the work has to be outsourced to professionals. It's that I'm actually not capable of this, and I need to go and call somebody who has a PhD in this thing that I need to do.
I was going to say it's a dissemination of responsibility.
Yeah,
it's a shirking.
Yeah, it's a shirking of responsibility. So rather than that, we take responsibility for the tasks and the people that are under our authority, and work to ensure the desired outcome is accomplished. I think it's related to autonomy. Autonomy is the freedom and independence to govern oneself and make decisions without external interference. But I think there is a ditch when we start talking about autonomy in a libertarian circle, which would seek to throw off right authority. So we're talking about autonomy within the sphere where God has given you autonomy to exercise. But I think the main ditch people actually find themselves in is that they don't recognize properly the freedom and independence that they rightfully have, and so they see that responsibility and authority to those who it doesn't belong to, and that could be the state. In our day, it's usually the state and the shirking of responsibility and a failure to own what they should own. Yeah,
it's scary to know that it's on you to figure it out, whatever it is. And so the natural response is not to behave in a more agency positive direction, but to try to get rid of as much of that responsibility as possible so that you have as many people to blame as you possibly can when things go wrong.
Yeah, 100%. And then on the gravitas side, the definition was related to dignity, lordliness, bearing, comportment, and presence. I think presence is really helpful with gravitas.
Yeah.
It's more felt than it's seen, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I think it means being sober-minded, serious, but not self-serious. It's often imitated by those who wished to be viewed as having more gravitas or being more important than they are. One example that I've seen of this in the past, we had these guys who were like KC-135 tanker pilots but they would, and like they refueled like a special forces operation like one time, and then they're talking about their job like they are special forces, and you're like, oh, you were in Iraq in 2017. Oh, where were you, or did you support this mission or this task force or whatever? And they'd be like, oh, I can't talk about that. Like, dude, I've been read into everything you have and more. We can talk about that. You're just saying that in front of the ladies so that they think you're BA.
Yeah.
And it's just like, typically when you actually meet guys who've done stuff, they don't talk about it and they don't pretend like I can't talk. It's classified. You're not, So it's what we're talking about is, if you have gravitas, it's not arrogant. You're not praising yourself. You let others praise you. It's not boastful and proud. But I think it's important, like it's knowing your station and also being content with what your station is, where God has placed you. So rather than being arrogant and braggadocious, just a humble confidence that comes from being tested.
I think one of the ways to think about gravitas is owning the ground that you're standing on. The difference between that and the thing that you're talking about, which is this veneer of gravitas, is to try to own the ground that everyone's standing on, which is the wrong approach.
Yeah.
You want to be in control of what you're control of and be confident in that arena. And outside of that, be humble enough to go, yeah, that's not my thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, no, part of that is knowing your limitations and your own shortcomings, but then having confidence in the things that you're actually competent in. And not giving off airs of false bravado, but having the confidence, and then you can tell if it's real because you can back it up. Like when the rubber hits the road, and people around you are like, oh yeah, he's actually very competent in that thing that he's confident in, and that just adds to the gravitas, I think. That
is actually where it's earned, is in the actual action, the execution of competency. It's not in the statement of competency. No one actually really cares what you say you're good at. You would rather show them and then let them go, oh, you're really good at that thing.
Yeah.
Be like, thanks, I've practiced a lot, or, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Really, really enjoyed that one.
That is a good question.
Very, very thoughtful and thought provoking. The next question, I'm not sure if this was meant for this podcast or if they were trying to get to Hana Cosmos, but if this is a Hana Cosmos question, info@hanacosmos.com. I don't actually know if that's a real email address, but it'll probably get there. Ben and Brian can tackle it. But no, he said, this guy is a cousin who's female. She's extremely caught up on demons being the sole cause of all the problems in the world. She believes that even Christians have demons in them, tempting them at all times and getting them to do evil things or just daily sinful things. Her brother, a man with a family who's finally attempting to answer the call of Christ on his life after years of disobedience and pain, is being told by her that the recent sickness he had was a demon that needed to be prayed out of him. His question is, what is a biblically loving way to redirect her to the truth that demons cannot dwell where the Holy Spirit dwells, since there's not an explicit verse that states it? She's also a big fan of faith healing, etc. So what do you think?
Oh, man. These are, I don't know if this is the correct response to this all the time, but my immediate instinct would be to ask a lot of questions. And then almost inevitably, when you have someone who is really convicted of something like this and really convinced of it, you can ask 6 or 7 questions and there will be at least one contradiction, if not multiple, in her answers. And that would be my first response, is to just let her talk and then go, hang on a second. A minute ago you said this and now you're saying this. So which one is it?
Yeah.
And like get her to try to flesh out what she actually believes. What you tend to find with people like this is that, at least in my experience, they have a ton of conviction on like the way this works out practically, but it's sort of all imaginary and it's not actually built on any sort of foundation. There's nothing underneath there that she's really building that on top of. And so if you dig a little bit, you get to the bottom of the reasoning pretty quickly.
Yeah. And she's standing on thin air. I think the first question, are demons the main cause of all the world's problems, and you do have Christians have demons dwelling in them and tempting them? It's like, demons are not even close to the sole cause of anyone's problem. Anyone. You have the world and the flesh and the devil, and they all contribute, right? And demons are included in that. But by far and away, the human heart is the by far and away the largest contributor to all of our human problems. And so, the world, the flesh, and the devil, but the human heart is the main thing, right? I think, it's definitely the historic Christian position. He's right. Christians can be oppressed by demons, right? You can have demonic attacks.
I just want to point out very quickly that these questions are actually extremely linked because the non-gravitas reaction to any issue that you have is to immediately go, oh, I'm being oppressed by demons. Now, that might be accurate in some way, shape, or form, but if that's your immediate response, we're already taking a step in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's farming out your problems to something else.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyways, continue.
Christians can be oppressed by demons, but not possessed. I think the main problem with this view today is it's similar to our modern psychotherapy take that it wants to diagnose every single problem in your life as chronic, or it's a result of a poor diet, or it's a chemical imbalance, or whatever it is. We can diagnose it, and we can give you a prescription for it, and this will help.
We've got to go dig up some traumatic event from your childhood so that we can fix you.
Right. But whose ever fault it is, it's not your fault. It's the demons.
It's someone else's.
Yeah. And so the answer is the problem is sin and the solution is repentance. Like it's simple, but it's not easy. But does prayer work against demon oppression, possession, things like that? Yeah, obviously we're told the prayer of the righteous man avails much. By all means pray, but prayer alone for deliverance against what may or may not be oppression by demons will not be a panacea here. Because that's not going to be the main problem. Even if it exists, it's a fraction of it's a contributing factor, not the root cause here. And it reminded me of in Matthew 12, where Jesus is talking about the unclean spirit. When it goes out of a person, it passes through the waterless places, seeking rest, but it finds none. Then it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept, and put in order. Then it goes and brings with it 7 other spirits more evil than itself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of the person is worse than the first. So it will be with this evil generation. So, it's not enough to remove the evil. The soul has to be indwelt with the Holy Spirit. Or, even if you fix that problem, worse demons like pride, or, again, it's not a demon, it's the human heart where pride comes from, will return and be harder to kick than whatever the other thing was.
Also, this is just inherently a very low view of the power of God. Like, to think that the real operative force that's affecting everyone in the world is something other than God's providence is idolatry.
Yeah, absolutely. On the question of faith healing, have you seen the American Gospel
I have, yeah.
series? So the second one's really good. The first one, though, talks about all of the faith healers and the Todd Whites and Benny Hinn's and things like that. Mm-hmm. And if you can watch that and then still subscribe to faith healers, like I don't really have anything else for you.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't remember where I heard it, but years ago, I think it was in a class. Somebody told me that that the verse in Luke 11 that talks about will a father, when his son asks for a fish, give him a snake. That is one of the proof texts for Christians not being possessed, being able to be possessed by demons. But I think there's a bunch of other ones that, you're right. It doesn't directly say, you can't quote in Matthew, you can't be possessed by demons if you're a Christian, right?
Yeah.
But I think these are helpful. So you have 1 Corinthians 6, 19 and 20. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought with a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. I think that one's helpful where if you're a Christian, then you're indwelt with the Holy Spirit. And this is kind of like the divided house thing, but like if the Holy Spirit is dwelling in you, there's no demons dwelling in you. Like that's, do you think that demons can dwell
and coexist
with the Holy Spirit? It's just not possible. 1 John 4, you, dear children, are from God and have overcome them, because the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. So I think to your point, like resting in the sovereignty of God, the majesty of God, the power of God, do you think God would let this happen to his children? Do you think he's not powerful enough to keep demons from possessing Christians?
Also, does he not love you?
Yeah. Yeah.
He loves you. He bought you with a price that was a heavy one, and he genuinely is for you. He's not going, all right, now I'm going to take my child and lead him through the demon cave all the time, where like your entire life is just him shoving you into the worst possible situation he can find for you. I think our adjustment has to be made of not just the sovereignty and power and majesty of God, all of those things for sure, but also in the fact that he is genuinely for us. He loves us as a father loves his children.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think that's even a good understanding of Luke 11. Yeah. Colossians 1:13, God has delivered us from the dominion of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son. And then with 1 Corinthians 10:21, you cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons too. You cannot share in the Lord's table and in the table of demons. Like this idea that like these things don't coexist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to sum up, Christians can't be possessed. The human heart is the main problem. Mark 7. What comes out of a person is what defiles him. For from within, out of the heart of man, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person. So, like, that's pretty clear that the human heart is the problem. Sin is the problem. Repentance is the answer, not exorcism for Christians.
It's also just worth pointing out that we live in a fallen world. Sin has corrupted everything. We're all going to die. And so sickness is just a part of living as a human being, right? Like that's just part of being a person. And so like even the Apostle Paul had a thorn in his side that the Lord left for his sanctification. These are things that are actually probably, I think if we're constantly looking at the stuff that God is giving us, the trials and the blessings and everything else, and then like anything that might not immediately elicit a positive reaction in us, we go, oh, it's demons. Like, come on, guys.
I mean, even God's sovereign, God ordains trials for our good, right?
Yes.
These things test the dross out of us and sanctify us. And like even these things that we may not enjoy, like a sickness or something like that, like this is God's sovereignty and it's working together for our good.
Yep.
So watch American Gospel, reject Benny Hinn and Todd White, tell your cousin to take responsibility for sin, repent, and then ask God for strength to overcome temptation and rest in the truth that no temptation has overtaken you that's not common to man. God's faithful and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation, he will also provide a way of escape that you may be able to endure it. So with that, that's the end of our questions. Actually, we have one more, and we're going to save this one for the Brutal American, right?
Yep.
Okay.
We'll save this for the paywall show. Excited to answer that one. I think it'll be a really, really good one. And it pertains to some of this other stuff that we talked about towards the beginning of the episode with allies and how to kind of interact with people that might be just a half step to the left or right of you. So that'll be good. Hang around for that. We're still doing the deal on the Brutal American mugs. You can get one for free from us here at New Christian Press when you sign up for the All Access Patreon. You also get the Brutal American show over at the Hard Men Patreon. So go check that out. It's been getting more and more traction in there. We got more and more interaction going on, conversations happening, good questions. And as you've seen in this episode, we'll continue to kind of fill in our sheet here and work through these quarterly. So definitely go check that out. All right, guys. Well, hopefully we'll see you over on the Brutal American here shortly. As always, stay frosty, fight the good fight, act like men.